Good afternoon to everyone at today's hearing of the Vetting Commission, established under Law Number 65 on the external evaluation of judges of the Supreme Court of Justice. I'm Scott Bales, the chair of the commission, and I declare today's session open. The hearing is being conducted under Law Number 262 of the year 2022 on measures related to the selection of candidates for the positions of members in self-administration bodies of judges and prosecutors, and under the Commission's rules of organization and functioning. Subject of today's hearing is Denis Lesnic, a candidate for the position of member on the Evaluation and Selection Board, Superior Council of Magistracy. Subject of today's hearing is Mr. Denis Lesnic. He works as an attorney at the Attorney Office, Denis Lesnic. Mr. Lesnic, good, welcome this afternoon.
Good day, thank you.
You will see in the hearing room with you the other members of the commission. With you there in person are Lillian Ansu, Marcel van Vettering, Julian Russo, William Brower, our vice chair, Andre Bevel, Lovely Peerling, and Yuri Gatskin. You will see on the video screen are two other members, me and Commission member Garrett Sprenger. You may also notice in the hearing that there's a photographer who takes pictures just briefly, and you will see members of the Commission's staff and possibly members of the public and the media. The hearing is being conducted with interpretation between Romanian and English. To allow for accurate interpretation, everyone should speak clearly and slowly, and only one person should speak at a time. Proceedings are also being recorded. The recordings of the Commission's public hearings generally are available online at the Commission's website, www.vettingmd.eu, within 3 days after the hearing. During the hearing, members of the Commission may ask you questions. We ask you to answer them truthfully and completely. Your explanations are important to the Commission in verifying your financial and ethical integrity. At the end of the hearing, you'll be given an opportunity to make a brief closing statement. In posing questions, we will consider your privacy and, where possible and required, the privacy of your family members and close persons. So we will omit unnecessary data such as ID numbers, specific residential addresses, bank account information, and similar things. For the protection of privacy, we ask you to do the same. We will begin by briefly reviewing the evaluation procedure. The Commission initiated its evaluation on the 2nd of May 2025 by notifying Mr. Lesnic by email and asking him to complete and return an ethics questionnaire and the declarations required by Law Number 26. He did so on May 8th of this year. Between the 27th of June and the 16th of August, the Commission asked Mr. Lesnic to provide additional information to clarify certain matters during 2 rounds of questions. He responded on time and provided answers and documents. On the 5th of September, we notified Mr. Lesnic that the Commission identified some areas of doubt about his compliance with the ethical and financial criteria. We asked him to attend today's hearing. On the 6th of September, he submitted a request for access to the evaluation material. The request was on September, and materials were provided in electronic format. Mr. Lesnic, do you wish to make any corrections or additions to the answers you previously provided to the request for information?
You mean under round 1 and 2 rounds of questions, or in general during the evaluation process?
Yes, what we're trying to confirm is that the information you've provided to this date is complete and accurate.
Yes, they are complete and accurate in whole.
Thank you. Are the answers to the ethics questionnaire and declaration that you returned on the 8th of May 2025 still accurate as today?
Yes, they are accurate as of today.
Good. Well, members of the commission will now ask some additional questions. We'll try to keep our questions short and to the point, and we ask that your answers be short and to the point as well. Commission member Andre Bevel will begin the questions.
Bună ziua, domnule Lesnic.
Good day, Mr. Lesnic, good day.
Vom discuta în continuare
Further, we will discuss the issues we notified you in the notification on inviting you to the hearing on potential doubts. The doubt group number 1 regards potentially inexplainable wealth. So we have found that between 2010, 2011, 2023, and 2024, you cannot explain some part of the wealth. It results from the difference between the income and spending of your household during those years. Now we will discuss each year separately. In 2010, the deficit between the income and revenues was 8,900 lei. The inexplicable wealth for this deficit in 2010 is determined by the annual total cost of the population for its consumption. In this context, we have a general question for the beginning. What was the source of revenues you used to cover this difference in 2010? Actually, these amounts, I mean 8,900 lei, it was not revenues in 2010. I didn't spend this 8,900 lei simply because in 2010 I had smaller income. We spent the real revenues that we have had in 2010, 13,893 lei, the total revenue. At the same time, when calculating these figures to obtain this deficit, the Commission used the CCP of the Statistical Office and its methodology. This amount is the difference between the average and small revenues of the population, the difference between the real spending of the household in 2010 and the ones established through calculating the household spending by using CP method of the Statistical Office explains that the calculation includes some income that was withdrawn. In 2010, I didn't have income spending on tobacco products and alcoholic beverages. We didn't spend money and didn't buy cigarettes and alcohol beverages. I didn't spend money for my house. No medical and healthcare related spending was done. We didn't seek any medical assistance. At the same time, we didn't spend money for education. So we didn't have spending for restaurants, hotels, as we didn't use such services. The difference in the spending of my household and the one calculated under the Statistical Office methodology shows that when calculating it, big amounts were used rather than the amounts effectively spent by my household. May I kindly draw your attention that in 2010 we had spending for food that were smaller, 8,700 lei, under the CPI methodology. So we received on a weekly basis foodstuff from the countryside, and we didn't buy often clothes or shoes. We bought only what was needed, and we had smaller spending. The household-related spending is in compliance with the Statistical Office methodology. We paid the public transportation fee based on subscriptions. I think 50 lei was the monthly spending for health, for the medicines. We used we bought very simple office supplies and some hygienic items. I highlight those specified items that you used to make these calculations under statistical office methodology. And this is the situation in 2010. Thank you, Mr. Lesnic. We would like to kindly ask you, since we have a simultaneous translation between English and Romanian, may I please ask when you answer, please speak a bit slowly so that the interpreter can manage to translate. Okay, with regard to the groups of spendings, one of its categories that you mentioned is the one to provide for the house, for the apartment. You said that in 2010 you didn't spend anything for the house as you stayed in student hostel. At the same time, today you mentioned that back in 2010 you didn't take any education degree. Can you please provide more accurate answers? What hostel you stayed at, under what educational establishment? Thank you. In 2010, indeed, I didn't take any educational degree. We did stay at the student hostel, since we didn't have a place to stay, and some of our acquaintances helped us by providing during the vacation one bed in a hostel. The hostel is on Panhalipa Street. These hostels have been destroyed. They don't exist. So I tried to find some of the former staff working in that hostel. Unfortunately, because the hostel was demolished, I couldn't find any updated information. We stayed at the hostel of the State Moldovan University, which used to have 3 or 4 hostels nearby. I don't recall the number of the hostel out of the 3 or 4. If I understood you correctly, from your answer, basically you stayed in the hostel not officially. No, you didn't occupy the bed based on a contract signed with the university. No, I didn't. So how was it possible as you stayed in the hostel? Because the hostels have a person on duty at the entrance, and they check the tenants who enter. I don't recall all the details. I stayed during a time when students were not there. I don't recall all the details at it. We stayed 15 years ago. But I don't recall all the tiny details. Can we elaborate on that a bit? You mentioned that you stayed when students were not there. At the beginning of the calendar year, when they have winter holidays during 1 month. It is when we started staying there. Did you stay for a year or only during the winter holidays? I stayed for some time in the student hostel back in 2010, during 2010. So CCP is calculated for 1 year, from 2010. Out of the 12 months of 2010, how many months did you occupy the bed? Around 11 months. Sometime we spent the countryside, then we returned back to hostel. If you recall this stay, did you pay for staying there? No, I didn't pay. I understand. Likewise, back in 20,
în runda 1 și 2 de întrebări,
you mentioned that at the end of 2009 you had certain savings in cash. Can you clarify what was the amount, roughly amount? I admit that during round 2 and 1, I mentioned that it was not a considerable amount. I can explain why. A non-considerable amount means an amount smaller than 4,000 or 5,000 lei. As during 2009 and 2010, was 15 years ago. I cannot recall with certainty, but hypothetically, in 2009, I worked as a bailiff. With salary I found a salary notification of 2,800 lei a month. Hypothetically, indeed, at the beginning of 2010, I could have had savings of no more than 3,000 lei. I cannot ascertain with certainty. That is why I provided the answer I provided in round 1 and 2 on this topic. I don't recall the exact amount, 2,000 or 3,000, because the salary was 2,800 lei. The same salary was for the following year. But at the beginning you mentioned the savings was 4,000, 5,000, and now you end up saying 3,000 lei. I mean, it was not a considerable amount, because for me a non-considerable amount of money for me is between 4,000 and 5,000. Since I had a monthly salary of 2,800 at that time, then the savings could have been 3,000 lei as pay amount for our family. 2,000 or 3,000 lei could have been the amount of the savings in cash. I cannot ascertain, because I didn't provide an answer at this question for 2011, because in 2010 the material situation was not the best, and in 2011 I assume I had 1,000 lei in savings, not a big amount at the beginning of the year.
Așa. Haideți să trecem la 2011.
Let's discuss 2011.
În acest an
During
a fost detectată
2011,
o
we
diferență dintre
found
cheltuielile și
a
veniturile
difference between
gospodăriei
the
de
household's income
13.952 de lei.
spending of
Ca și
13,900
în
lei.
anul 2010,
Like in
diferența
2010, the
este în mod
difference
predominant
is
determinată
predominantly
de
determined
cheltuielile
by
anuale,
the annual
cheltuielile de consum a
spending
populației.
for consumption
Aceeași
of the
întrebare,
population. So I would
care
like to
erau
ask the
sursa
same
prin
question.
care
What
acoperați
were
dumneavoastră
the
acest
sources
deficit?
out of which you were able to cover this difference, this deficit? I would like to reiterate with the same answer. In 2010, as the answer for 2020, these amounts use a calculation method used by the National Statistical Office, because when making calculation, some amounts spending were retained that we didn't have in that year. In 2011, we didn't spend money on alcoholic beverages and tobacco products. We didn't buy any furniture or make any repairs for the apartment. In 2011, we lived in an apartment belonging to our family relatives. The apartment was provided with everything necessary, and we didn't have to buy anything in addition. Healthcare expenses during that year were not incurred, as we didn't need any healthcare services. Education spending, we didn't take any degree, we didn't use restaurant, hotel services, and didn't pay for them. We had the modest income. We could afford at most additional spending, but not in big amounts that would be included in this amount calculated under the Statistical Office methodology. At the same time, when calculating the household's spending using the Statistical Office method, at the same time, they included bigger amounts than the amounts incurred or spent in reality by myself. And this part, I would like to kindly draw your attention that for 2011 we had spending for foodstuffs that were smaller than 1,800 under the Statistical Office method, and we received the foodstuffs from my parents, confirmed by the notary. We didn't buy shoes and clothes. We bought just the minimum amounts of shoes and clothes strictly necessary. We had smaller spending. Spending for household was not over 4,900, as the apartment was provided with everything. We used the public transportation based on a subscription. We had some mobile, cell phone spending, and smaller spending for some entertainment. We had smaller income, and I did my best to spend my salary for living and not exceed the salary amount. At that time, it was only in May when I obtained the attorney's license, and I didn't work for a long time as an attorney. And again, this data dates back 15 years ago. Let's speak about the household-related spending. As you say, you didn't incur because during that year you stayed in an apartment that belonged to some your relatives on Budibista Street. Yes, indeed.
Puteți să spuneți care temeiul în care ați stat? Ați
Was
făcut
the
un
reason?
contract
Why?
cu
Based on
avocatul,
what reason? Did you use a contract? No, it was just an agreement, verbal agreement, or required request from my mother to my
Trai într-un
mother's sister.
apartament nu reprezintă doar chirie.
Staying in an apartment doesn't imply
lângă asta,
only
acolo dacă ați trăit,
rental
ați
related
locuit tot anul,
expenses.
asta
As you
înseamnă
stayed
și
a
sezon
year,
cald și
that
sezon
means
rece.
that you also stayed during
Întrebarea este
heating
cine a
season.
acoperit cheltuielile de servicii
Paid
comunale,
for
energie electrică, energie
utilities,
termică, apă,
power,
canalizare,
heating,
internet,
internet, phone bills. When during the proceedings, I answered this question, and I mentioned that we stayed in that apartment. Some of the spendings or costs were covered by my parents. Regretfully, I have to say, I didn't have enough money to cover all the expenses, and I mentioned that in round one of questions. It is mentioned there that my parents also
În
contributed.
runda 1
Okay,
și
in
2
round 1 and
și
2,
astăzi ați
and
menționat
today
că la
you
sfârșitul anului
mentioned that at the
2010
end of
ați avut
2010 you had
niște economii
some
semnificative în numerar.
insignificant
Puteți, vă rog,
cash
să precizați
savings.
care
Can you
era
clarify once
estimativ
again
valoarea acestui?
the estimated amount as mentioned
da,
in
sfârșitul anului
at the end of
2010.
2010, please?
Exact.
In the beginning of 2011, I assume no more than 1,000 lei. I cannot ascertain because a lot of time passed since then, but it was a small amount.
Haideți să ne apropiem
Can
mai
we
aproape, să ne apropiem de prezent. În anul
Speak about
2023,
the present. In
cheltuielile gospodăriei
2023,
noastre
your household
par să depășească
spending
veniturile cu cel puțin
exceeded the revenues by
22.485 lei.
22,400 lei.
Aici, de asemenea,
And
diferența este
the
creată de
difference
cuantumul
is
total al
due to
cheltuielilor și
the
veniturilor
total
per
the
gospodărie.
difference between the total
Puteți să
revenues and
explicați care
spending
au
of the
fost
household.
sursele,
Please
mijloacele
explain
prin care ați
the
acoperit acest
sources
sold
of
negativ.
money that you used to cover this deficit, this difference. We didn't have additional expenses, and rather than or only those that were equal to the revenues earned. 22,400 lei. We didn't have this additional revenue. The real difference between the spending and revenues of my household under the statistical office method explains that when calculating it, they also included some spending that we didn't incur. In 2023, we didn't have spending expenses on alcoholic beverages and tobacco products. We didn't consume, neither me nor my spouse nor my juvenile child, alcoholic beverages. We don't live in our apartment. It would belong to us, and it is equipped with everything. During that time, neither me nor my spouse take any education degree. My child was very little. Neither me nor my spouse or children used any hotel expenses. So the family spending and the difference is due to that when calculating the difference under the statistical office methodology, big amount of revenues and spending were included, a part of which we didn't have. In 2023, we spent smaller amounts for foodstuff. The foods were sent every 2 or 3 weeks by my parents or when they visited us, and we confirmed it through a notary. My child was at my parents, and we didn't have big household spending. and my spouse and my children were not hospitalized for longer than a month in the hospital during that year. We bought only the strictly necessary shoes and clothes. Healthcare spending was not during that time bigger than the one specified by the statistical office. At the same time, given that our child was hospitalized in the hospital, the transportation means were only the public transportation used by my family, and my child didn't pay the fare. The spouse stayed with the child at home, and she used very seldomly the transportation. I used the public transportation. I also used the minibus 109, or I would walk. In 2024, I used the bus 9 and 8. Transportation-related costs were smaller than the one established by the statistical office. Even if we take into consideration my taxi traveling, I had to take them because to take my child to and back from the hospital and in emergencies, or when I was late to my job duties, and I had to take the taxi because I don't own a car. As to communication spending, we paid only TV and internet and the cell bill. The spending was smaller than the one provided by the statistical office, and my child didn't have such spending. Recreation, entertainment, and culture existed during the time within the limit established by the statistical office amount. So let's discuss some aspects. You mentioned during the round of questions and today that for some time of 2023, your spouse with your child stayed in the countryside. Can you say specifically during what period of time? All in all, in 2023, they stayed for around about 3 months. I mean, my spouse and my child stayed in the countryside for 3 months throughout the year. Let me check. According to the statements issued by the healthcare institution between the 3rd March 2023 up to 31st March 2023, the child was hospitalized with my wife in the hospital. In 2023, during January, again, my child was hospitalized and assisted, accompanied by my wife, up to December 2020, from December up to 12th of January, my child was in the hospital with my wife. They were not at home. And the excerpts of the statement were provided by me to the Commission earlier. My child and my wife stayed for 2 months, more than 2 months, at the child's grandparents. After the surgery, my child had, and he required some rehabilitation, and then we decided, because the mother is nurse, we decided to send my child with my wife to the countryside because of the health issues. My child didn't attend the kindergarten, and after the surgery, it was obvious that the viruses were in the kindergarten, and because of the health state, my child couldn't attend the kindergarten. Can you say once again the 3 months? Yes. In the hospital, my child with my wife stayed during first half of July 2023, my wife up to 15th of August 2023, she was until then to the countryside. It's a rough estimate. At the same time, they have to return to Chisinau to see the doctor, and later they returned to the countryside. Approximately in August, they returned on August 30th to the countryside. And at the beginning of October, they returned from the countryside to Chisinau. Your request is that these months to be excluded fully from the calculation under the statistical office method. The question posed was why my spending do not equal the spending under the statistical office method. Simply because some spending were not incurred by my household during the time when my wife and our child were either in the hospital or at the countryside. And we didn't incur those expenses. That is why the total expenses of my household are smaller than the ones calculated under the statistical method. And at the same time, to consolidate my position during the time when my wife and our child stayed at the countryside, I submitted the statements from my wife's bank account, which confirmed that during that time they made some purchases while at the countryside, and a taxi was ordered for myself to Chisinau. That's the following questions. She has 88 payments for some e-taxi platform services, and these 88 payments are made by your wife have been made during the year. We don't have some 2 months in a row that such services were not ordered by your wife. That means that your wife, that person that requested the taxi was in Chisinau and needed the taxi for a drive traveling in Chisinau. I'd like to kindly draw your attention that during 14th of July 2023, my wife ordered while at the countryside a taxi for myself. I submitted also the registration of our phone call and data from the taxi company. Taxi was ordered on 14th, on the date of 14th, and in a short time after that, my wife makes purchases in Bricheni town. The family stays in Grimankauts village, and my wife was asked by her mother or father to go to Bricheni to make some procurements. And during the time when taxi was ordered, and I mentioned and submitted to the commission that during the days when the taxi was ordered, some purchases of foodstuffs were made. Some purchases were made from 27th of July from Linela. And on the same day, taxi was ordered. There are some more similar signs which show that the taxi was ordered and followed on the specific day, followed by some purchases from the food market. Tell us, please, practically speaking, how it happened. You would call your wife, asking her to order a taxi from an address to another? Yes, exactly. And I submitted our phone call registrations, recordings to you. She makes online orders to order taxi for me, and I submitted these recordings of. Would it be simpler for you to order taxi during 2023? I couldn't, and I didn't do that.
I was not used to do that. So practically I'm doing that now. Why? I didn't know all the aspects, technical aspects, so I was not interested. So that is why I was asking my wife to do that. In 2024, I installed the app on the gadget, on the device, and to call the taxi myself. But for that period, my wife was doing that for me. Okay, let's reach 2024. In 2024, the deficit between the expenditures and profit, it was 4,700. And we are talking about the total quantum of consumption and also some expenditures related to the fitness center and a vacation abroad. The same question, how did you cover the deficit? So the similar situation, like for the same for the other years. So the expenditures were the same for 2024. In order to obtain an amount of 43,970 lei, we had the calculation of National Bureau of Statistics according to the methodology of National Bureau of Statistics. So we are talking about the average calculation, small and big expenditures established by the National Bureau of Statistics. The differences of the real expenditures and those in the calculations for the households is due to the fact that the calculations were retained some expenditures that my household didn't have. So these differences established respectively are the following. I didn't have costs related for the alcoholic drinks or tobacco. We did not consume anything alcoholic. Also, we have no needs for the furniture procurement, for example. For this period, me or my wife did not go to studies. There were no needs for my children. So the hotel services were not used by me or my wife. So if talking about for the effectuation of calculations for the household, according to the calculations, according to the methodology of Bureau of Statistics, we included amounts that were bigger than in reality were covered by the needs of the household that I had. So also we procured the alimentation products that were cheaper than 9,000 that are also included by the Bureau of Statistics. So the alimentation products were sent by parents from the countryside. So also talking about the procurement of the alimentation was not needed for my children, for the child and for the wife, because they were in the countryside. And also there were no expenditures for the health. They were smaller than those provided by the National Bureau of Statistics. If talking about the transportation, we are using the public transportation. The child is a minor. That is why he was staying at home, and my wife was using it rarely. I was using the public transportation, so again, the expenditures for the transportation means were smaller than those provided by the National Bureau of Statistics. We paid for internet, television, and mobile phone. Again, these amounts are smaller than those provided by the National Bureau of Statistics. So if talking about the recreation and culture for different services, in this period was in the limits of the quantum according to the National Bureau of Statistics. If you allow me, for the entire period examined 20 and 2024, the members had under the limit established by the National Bureau of Statistics. The income of the household was never big, so it was up to 90,000 lei. Afterwards, it was around 170,000. In quantum of 190,000 was in the period of 2017. With the members of the household, we had the expenditures according to the income of the household. Also, the parents that are in the countryside were insuring us with alimentation products. Thus, the expenditures related to the food were also small. For a long period of time, the wife was not for a long time at home, so that is why we had no expenditures that could be taken place while she would be in the city. No commodities, food alimentation products, or the amount of expenditures of my family and household is smaller than the one provided as average by the National Bureau of Statistics. So this shows I had no possibility to have bigger expenditures because I didn't have that type of income. The expenditures were based on the income. Thank you, Mr. Lesnic. Before going to the next question, I would like to invite my colleagues if they have any questions when it comes to the unexplainable ownership.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lesnic, do I understand correctly that you stayed within the budget that you earned?
Pe ce canal este traducerea, vă rog? Domnul Lesnic nu aude traducerea.
Do you get the translation now?
It's on the other channel.
Da, da.
No? Okay, I'll ask my question again. Do I understand correctly that you stayed within your budget to live?
Da, doar în limita venitului care l-am avut.
Just within the limits that I had, because I'm the only one who is active, employed. In the period of 23-24, we had issues of health related to the child, and the wife stays with the child at home, so that I'm the only one employed in the limits of the possibilities.
Was it difficult to stay within this budget?
Cer scuze, n-am...
Was it difficult to stay within this budget?
Foarte dificil.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. And do I understand correctly that your child is still ill?
La moment stare este stabilă.
Currently, the status is stable.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So, with the help of your parents-in-law and with the help of them and in-kind food and all that, you managed to live of your salary.
Da, da, adică a fost un aport foarte...
Yes, exactly. They supported a lot.
Your story. Okay. And then there was this issue about ordering taxis, and I don't seem quite to understand how this went. You called your wife to order a taxi for you?
Nu, pe perioada lui 2023,
For 2023, my wife was in the hospital, so she was requesting the taxi both for herself and for me. And it was difficult to call the taxi by phone, so we had this approach. She was requesting the taxi through the app. We have the registration of the phone calls, and respectively, when she was at the countryside, I was asking her by phone to request the taxi by the app, and she was sending me the details related to the taxi, but also the payment was from the bank card, because sometimes it was happening because I did not have enough cash. That is why I was asking my wife to request the taxi so I can reach the point. In the majority of, along the 2023, the services were related to the child while going to the hospital. For the others, it was just emergency cases when a taxi was needed.
And these taxis were used within Chișinău? Yes?
da, întocmai.
Exactly. I would like to pay your attention during this period of time when the taxi was ordered. I was specifying, and Nicolae Testimențeanu, Alexandru Șusev, so the lawyer's bureau, which is on Șusev, in Chișinău, Șusev Street, and it was from home to work. They was needed, and in the discussions on the phone with my wife, because she was in the countryside, we was calling more often each other, inclusively on Viber. It was a longer period of time for the countryside, and I haven't seen her for quite long, and I was talking on the phone. And sometimes I was very in a hurry, and that is why my wife was ordering, and it was covered and paid by my wife by card.
Mulțumesc.
Mulțumesc.
I have one more question, Mr. Lesnic. You just told the Commission that you received food from your family-in-law. How did it work in practice? Did they come to your house every week, or did you go to their house? Can you tell something about it?
We are using the public transportation, and was brought to the bus station. And from the bus station home. Sometimes in 2023, parents were coming more often to visit us, considering the situation in the family, and respectively, when they were coming, they were bringing the alimentation products, and in 2024 they were visiting quite often. Other than that, the products were sent by the bus, and afterwards I was taking the trolley bus, going to the bus station and taking the alimentation products.
This happened every week or every month?
Within 2010-2011, every week, in 23-24, more rarely, like 2-3 times per month. And when our parents were visiting, they were bringing them with themselves.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to ask one question, if allowed.
Just one small clarification about the last question, and I now will give you the mic.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Domnul Lesnic, dumneavoastră adineauri ați răspuns la
Mr. Lesnic, you've answered to the question of my colleague Van der Ventere. In 2023, it was more rarely, but you said 3 times per week. 2-3 times per month. Oh, okay. Apologies, it was a mistake. Yeah, fair, thank you.
You can ask your question.
You may ask the question.
Got it?
Yeah. My question refers to the period 2010. In that same timely context, you have talked in the beginning of the hearing about we have avoided this, we have avoided that. Then you said that you stayed in a student's dormitory. First of all, I did not understand for which period, because in the beginning from the documents, I understood it was for a year. Now you said for a couple of months. Can you specify this a bit more? And the second part of my question would be, who is we in that context? Does it mean that not only you, but your entire family has lived in that dormitory?
In the dormitory, I was alone. I was not knowing my wife in that period of my time. So in that period, I was living in the dormitory. But there were situations when I was going to the countryside and coming back. But in 2010, I was living in the dormitory.
During the periods when the students had to be present at university, you have been also in that dormitory?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the first topic, inexplicable wealth? No. Okay, thank you. Domnul Lesnic, o să mergem acum
Mr. Lesnic, we will go to the second topic related to the activity of a lawyer. The lawyer's cabinet Lesnic is registered in the Chișinău municipality. Nicolai Costin 60/3. So you confirmed that this is the legal address and you have a renting contract with the LTD CD
imobil,
that has
este vorba
this
despre relais Malgalex.
real estate. We are talking about
Conform acestui
Malvelex.
contract, dumneavoastră ați
According to
încheiat
this
un birou
contract,
de 39,5 metri pătrați la un
there
preț
is
de 10 lei pe metru pătrat,
an area
ceea ce
of
semnifică o plată anuală de
39 square
395
meters.
de lei. Termenul contractului respectiv
So the
era
term of the contract,
15 iunie 2011, 14 iunie
so it's
2014.
15th of June 2011, 14th of June 2014. In this context, I would like you to explain
Care a fost temeiul acestui
what was,
preț relativ diminuat pentru
why
așa o
this
suprafață
price was relatively diminished for this area, for this surface of real estate. That was the agreement between me and administrator of the company. We know each other, so we are acquaintances, and respectively, he had a proposal that I can have some investments done there and to practice the lawyer services. But 2012 was not that productive, so that is why I decided not to rent it for so long. So I received the letters at that address, considering the relation that I have with the administrator, but I'm not practicing the lawyer services there anymore. But this amount is just because you're friends, or because he is your client and maybe you offered some services, maybe you had an agreement. I don't remember him being a client of myself. It was just an agreement on that price. Maybe it was the price for the renting. It was according to a similar quantum, and the situation wasn't that good in order to have a higher price for it. So there was needed investments. In which period of time you stayed there? I cannot remember right now because it was in 2011. For the entire period of the contract, or you left earlier? Not for the entire period of the contract. I understood. According to the information from the integrated management of the file BICT, your cabinet had correspondence for the court on the Stusev 41B. Could you confirm that this address is correct? And what is the reasoning of indicating this address? This is a correspondence address because it was offered a place in the office by the colleagues for free. So respectively, I'm practicing as a lawyer at this address. When you are saying colleagues, who's that? Lawyers, the Pro Dreptate Bureau of Lawyers. So you're practicing lawyer services in a different office without being associated to the organization. Yes, without being associated with this organization. Why didn't you update the address at the Ministry of Justice, Fiscal Service? And I was considering that I will have the financial possibility to rent and then real estate premises in Buyukan sector, but it was postponed, and respectively I had no occasion to change it. But with the possibility to have a renting address, I will change the legal address as well. So you're using this space for free, exactly. So the colleagues from the associate bureau are not perceiving any taxes from your side? No. Also from the information of PICT, in the assessment period, you participated as a lawyer in the court in the entire country, inclusively in Baltskoshine. We know you don't have any car as a property, and you didn't have any before. So how you were reaching these meetings and who were covering the costs? I was going with the clients, with their transportation means or public transportation. For example, in Cauchin in 2015, if I'm not wrong, I was taking the bus to reach the court of Cauchin. Or to Briceni. It was happening for the court in Briceni. I was taking the bus.
Cheltuielile le suportați personal sau
These
le
costs were covered
client?
by you personally or covered by the client. It was part of the amount of the contract.
Dumneavoastră, la 12 septembrie ați transmis
On
un
12th
e-mail
of September, you sent an email to the Commission with a set of documents referring to different aspects from the notification for the meeting, but one of the video registrations, there is your father and you
conducând un automobil de model Skoda.
driving a Skoda.
Cunoașteți, vă rog, dacă puteți să-mi spuneți,
If you
cunoașteți
can
care e temeiul legal
tell
în care
what
este
is the
folosit acest
legal
automobil? Îi
aspects
aparține tatăl
of
dumneavoastră
this
sau-
automobile. Is it owned by your father? I didn't ask, but I think that as anyone dies, the automobiles, I was not part of the process of buying this car.
Haideți altă. Îi aparține lui,
Okay,
îl
so
folosește
is this his
în
car?
mod constant.
Yeah, and he's using it constantly.
Hai să spunem mai simplu, stă la dânsul în curte
So
automobilul și el
this
îl
automobile
folosește
is in
ca
his
un
courtyard.
proprietar.
Yes, it stays, but he's using a different car. If talking about 2024, there was bought another automobile and he's using that one.
Nu Skoda care apare
Not
în
the Skoda that
registrare
appears
video.
in the video registration. No, he's not using the Skoda. So the video registration and the pictures, the content proves that the child was in this car, and the dates of these fragments of video and pictures, they were taken during the period the child was in the countryside. And they were attached in order to pay attention to the aspects that in the period, the child was in the countryside. To
Noi
prove
asta am
that.
înțeles.
We understood
Dar
that.
ne-a tras atenția
But
domnului
what
și
we
vreau să înțelegem
paid
dacă este
attention to was the
proprietar sau-
automobile. If who's the owner, you don't know. Maybe he's the owner. He possesses this car,
Eu
but
vă
I don't know.
mulțumesc,
I didn't
domnule
ask.
Lesnic, eu nu mai am întrebări.
I have no
Invit alți
questions.
colegi dacă au
I
întrebări.
invite the other colleagues. If they have questions, please address them.
Domnul Lesnic,
Mr. Lesnic, in your declarations, annual declarations,
organele fiscale,
as a lawyer for the fiscal service,
impozitul pe venit,
when it comes to the income
cheltuieli a biroului de
taxes, you also indicated
30-40.000.
some expenditures.
Explicați în ce constau aceste cheltuieli.
What are these expenditures about? So these are related to the practicing of legal services. So currently we are talking about the phone. They procured some equipment, the transportation, so all the expenditures relevant to the provision of the services, absolutely all the expenditures in order to practice as a lawyer. So we are talking about transportation, office supplies, equipment. This question was formulated on the way, and I'm supporting entirely the answer that I issued, but it was used for the provided services, inclusively the transportation on the bus, and it was included in the cashier as expenditures.
Scott, there are no other questions.
Are there any other questions?
There are no other questions.
Well, Mr. Lesnic, that brings us to the end of the panel members' questions. Would you like to make a brief statement before we conclude this afternoon's hearing?
Yes, I believe I would like to Shall I make the brief statement? I would like to kindly draw your attention that the information from my evaluation dossier fully confirmed that the facts presented regarding the expenses incurred by my family are equal to the income, and the income and revenues of my household are smaller than the amount averagely established by this statistical office, and that explained and generated this difference. At the same time, the bank statements of my household that are attached to my personal evaluation dossier confirm the household's expenses in 2023-2024 that fully comply within the revenues earned amount and do not exceed the expenses specified, calculated by the statistical office. They only are within the limit of the average expenses, under the average expenses amount established by the statistical office, confirmed by the bank statements contents that I have provided to the Commission. At the same time, the wealth of our household as a subject of this evaluation, including for 2010, 2011, 2023, 2024, fully meet the revenues declared. This fact is confirmed inclusively by the data information provided to you as part of my dossier. During the evaluation, I have familiarized myself with my evaluation materials. That's it from my side.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Lesnic, for the information you provided to the Commission. We appreciate your cooperation. We've come to the end of today's hearing. After the hearing, the Commission will approve an evaluation report stating its conclusion whether the subject meets the criteria for ethical and financial integrity under Law Number 26. The Commission will strive to complete and improve its report and announce its conclusion as soon as possible. That concludes today's hearing. Good day to everyone.